Awesome. Well, I might get us started here as everyone's still jumping in, just being mindful of everyone's time as well. So, hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's Work of Design Live webinar presented by Studio Designer. If you're new here, Studio Designer is the leading platform for interior design businesses, helping designers manage projects, finances, and client relationships all in one place. We're here to make the business side of design easier so you can focus on what you love, which is creating beautiful spaces. And the Work of Design Live webinar series is all about bringing you expert insights, real-world strategies, and inspiring conversations to help you grow and thrive in the business of design. So my name is Helena, and I'm part of the marketing team here at Studio Designer. And today we're thrilled to be joined by two powerhouse speakers, Gail Doby and Kenneth Roberts. Gail is the co-founder of Pearl Collective and a business strategist who's helped design clients increase profitability, sometimes by over 500%. With 20 years of experience running her own design firm and degrees in finance, banking, and interior design, she's passionate about helping creative entrepreneurs overcome roadblocks and build thriving businesses. Kenneth is a principal at Interior Talent, where he's been connecting top design professionals with the right opportunities since 2003. A dynamic public speaker and strategic hiring expert, Kenneth has delivered keynotes at leading industry events and consulted with countless organizations on hiring, growth, and succession planning. Together, they're leading today's session, How to Attract and Build an A-Team that Results in More Profit. If you're feeling stretched thin, doing everything yourself, or unsure how to scale your team without burning out, this conversation is for you. We'll keep things practical and actionable so you'll walk away ready to build the team that frees up your time and grows your bottom line. And don't forget, there will be Q&A session at the end. Drop your questions in the Q&A box at any time throughout the webinar, and they might catch them then as well. So with that, let's get started, and I will pass it over to you, Gail and Ken.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. So excited to be here. Thank you to Studio Designer. And of course, my partner in crime with Gail and Pearl Collective. Super excited for everybody to be here. I want to start off first and talk about what we're going to be talking about. What are you going to learn? Obviously, finding a great A team and developing your team is tough. So we want to make sure we're talking about how are you going to reduce your time doing the things you do not want to do, right? The things you kind of hate, or you're not good at doing them. So we're going to talk about how that's going to help by bringing on the right team, how to achieve that maximum productivity and profitability of your team, right? Because if you have the right people in-house, you can do a lot more financially. And then how do you delegate and outsource effectively so you don't have to write off time, right? We want to just hit these points. We're going to get into some other stuff as well, but we're really excited to give you some great knowledge and also answer some of your questions at the end.
Okay, well, great. Well, before we get into all the content, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. So all of you are taking your time out to be here with us today, and you have probably a reason that you came. So if you wouldn't mind just dropping that in chat, that would be great. I'd love to see what you're hoping to gain from today's session. And then also, I'm going to launch a poll here to see, do you currently have employees? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just go ahead and answer that. All right. A lot of you do not have employees yet. Okay.
Well, this is going to be an exciting topic. Maybe this will be the start of your first one. And on that topic, I'll say, that first employee is always nerve-wracking, but it is so amazing. I remember when we hired our first employee, it was so exciting. It was really mind-blowing on, wow, so much more can be done. And it was a great energy. And then obviously it's spurred into so much more. So.
Okay. And while I'm waiting for the rest of you all to fill this out, there are 11 of you, if you will jump in there and answer that poll, it would be awesome. So we have one person that is a contract procurement manager and hoping to learn how to best position your business to better locate interior designers who need part-time support. Well, there are a lot of people that need procurement help, that's for sure. Sole proprietor who gets bogged down in non-creative stuff and would love to get assistance, but more as a, let's see what it says.
1099 person.
Yeah. More as a 1099 person than an employee. We can talk about that too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, we've got 20 people that have responded so far to the poll. And it looks like the majority of you, half of you, well, not majority, I guess that would be 50%, do not have employees. So you have a good reason to be here. And some of you have 1 to 2, there's 6 of you that have that, and 3 to 4 there are 3 of you, and then 1 person with 8 people. So it means that probably the person that has the 8 people plus, that means that you're probably wanting to make sure you get better people on your team. And if that is correct, go ahead and type that into chat too. We have one firm that has hired 2 design assistants this year, and I want to know if there are things we can do better. Okay, great. Well, we'll give you some opportunity if you want to drop a specific question into the chat. That would be great. All right. Well, thank you all for doing that poll. We're going to have a few more polls for you. So let me just hop back here. And how many of you think you want to have employees? I'm assuming that is a for sure yes if you're on this call. And how many of you don't know if you want to manage people? So the first one is, how many of you think you want to have employees? Yes or no? You can type that in chat. That would be great. I know it takes, okay. There's a no, not sure. Okay, great. How to give autonomy and finally see solid results. Yeah, that is always a challenge with new people, especially if you're not used to hiring. Not sure, no more than 3 or 2, right? Also not sure, not sure. Oh, a lot of people unsure about that. Very interesting. I want help, but I'm scared.
Well, we're going to help them. We're going to help them, Gail. We're going to make it all better.
Not sure. I'm used to control. At least you're honest about it. Yes, how to determine the right amount of team to run an efficient business. I don't enjoy managing people. Well, having people is a really, really important part of having a great team. Mm-hmm. Okay. How many of you want to hire, but you don't know how to do that? And is it better to have external collaborators or employees? We can certainly talk about that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the fear comes from people, Gail, because, they don't know how. And I think that's when they don't know if they want employees, is because there's a lot of fear of what comes with that. So we're hopefully going to address some of those things and take away some of the sting.
Yes, we want to help you with this for sure. So one of the questions that I have for you too is really the determining factor of when you hire people is what your revenue is. So I'm going to give you another poll. I'm going to launch that now. So go ahead and let us know where you are. Nobody is going to know who you are. So don't worry about sharing what your 2024 revenue was. Okay, we've got 4 people that are under $500,000. 1 person, the 1 to 2.5, 1 to $500,000 to $1 million. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it looks like the majority of you are under $500,000.
Okay. Well, they're going to be an eye opener when they can see what happens when you get the right employees.
Exactly right. Okay, so it looks as if most of you are 2.5 million is the highest, and the majority of you are $500,000 or less. So one of the reasons that we ask this question is that typically what we find in the industry is probably at around 250,000, you're hiring your first person on your team. And some firms, as they start to grow and they are working at the very high end, they might be there might be 1 person per $500,000 of revenue. So the more that you're making, the more you're likely to hire people. So those of you who are in that 1 to 2.5 million range could easily have anywhere from 6 to 10 people on your team. So that's pretty typical for sure. So I'll go ahead and end this poll. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to ask you, how many of you outsource? I'll launch that poll. Okay. Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah, I figured that. Yeah. Yeah.
This is pretty typical. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, and this was not usual even 5 years ago. So today, 67% are outsourcing and 33% are not. So I'll go ahead and end that poll too. Very interesting. All right. And then here's the big question. How many hours are you working a week? I'm going to launch this. And since the majority of you, or at least 50% of you, do not have employees, let's see how many hours you're working. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I better see a lot more of those 50, 60 ranges. I guess I know what's happening. You don't realize it, how much time you're spending on all those little things, running the errands, shopping, client issues.
Okay, so it looks like we have a pretty big spread across anywhere from 0 to 70 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And those of you who are working as much as 70 hours, I bet you're starting to feel a little bit burned out, aren't you? And if you are, then that's when certainly having outsourcing helps, but you may be at that point where if you're over 250,000 in revenue, you might be ready to hire. So I think it's really important for you to really think about this and think about what kind of lifestyle you want to have running the business. So if you have this opportunity to hire, I think you're going to find that your life is so much better and it's so much harder to do the work without that support. I've had employees for years. And so for me, I can't even imagine working by myself anymore because I just don't want to do the things that I don't enjoy. So that is kind of, to me, I think you really want to be thinking about why you need to hire. And here's the final question, and this is the real kicker here. Are you earning as much as you'd like to make? And go ahead and answer that question.
Yeah, I don't know. Yep. Okay. There's a yes in there. That's good.
Okay, there is oops, sorry, I didn't launch that up on the screen, did I?
Yeah.
For some reason, it's not launching.
That's okay. They're putting it in the chat.
Yep, that's perfect.
Yep.
Yes,
okay,
but
a couple of yeses, but a lot of no's.
Exactly. Well, good. This gives us a really good idea of who's in the audience and how we can help you today. So why don't we talk about why they should hire, Ken?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you all put it right there in that chat that you want to make more money. You're not making what you want to make. So making more money. You are not clonable, right? You can't clone yourself. They haven't come up with that technology yet. Until then, in order to do that, you have to have the right employees. So, I mean, you mentioned it early on about doing those tasks you don't want to do. And, it's not about just doing the tasks you don't want to do. It's also about the tasks you're just not really that good at, right? We talk about this, Gail, all the time about doing those tasks that you just really are, they're wasting time. They're doing it, taking twice as long, whether it's production work or, some FF&E aspects of it, and they could be getting that done much more efficiently. And then you can't work right on the hours. Well, go ahead, Gail, jump in. I know you were going to say something. I saw it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the thing is, and a lot of people don't really realize this, is they have this fear of hiring because they're afraid that they won't have enough business to keep that person on staff. And if you have that fear, certainly let us know in the chat. But the reality is if you can go out and get the business and you're good at it and people are coming to you because they love your design, you can make more money by having a billable person on staff. And the reason we say that is, for example, if you have somebody who's a senior designer, that person will pay for themselves because you can charge 3 to 4 times what you are paying that person. So if you pay that person, let's just use a round number, let's say 100,000, you should be able to bill that person at 300 to 400,000 a year.
Yep.
So that means that is $200,000 of additional profit you get by having an employee on your team. So it's really important to think about the advantage of why you want to have that person on your team. And if you're good at bringing in the business and you're attracting great clients, then it really pays to have employees on your team.
Yeah. And with the amount of hours people were saying they work, Gail, working, you're working weekends and nights, and you're not spending time with family, you're not spending time with friends, right? And if you have that work coming in, you're fearful, okay, well, if I bring on somebody, am I going to be able to maintain that? But really, there's got to be that balance, because if you're busy working, doing the actual work of the project, you need to be out there marketing, shaking hands and kissing babies, out there getting new clients, making new relationships. That employee will allow you to have the freedom to be able to do those things where, yes, maybe initially sometimes people are fearful of all the logistics that have to happen in order to having that employee, but it does allow you to have that balance to ensure that you can do the things that you want to do with family and friends and continue to grow your business. So.
Right. Well, and let's talk about the tasks that you mentioned this, that if you're not good at doing it, or you don't like to do it, or you have to learn how to do it, those are the things that you should be outsourcing or hiring for someone else to do for you. And if you can hire somebody at a lower hourly rate than you can charge out, so let's just say that you charge $200 an hour. If you can hire an employee at $30 or $40 an hour to do accounting, and to do your studio designer entering proposals and all of the things that are necessary to run the business, or sourcing, things like this, it is way definitely in your favor to hire somebody else at those lower rates and not spend your time and your energy doing things you don't really enjoy doing. And Ken, you mentioned something that I think is critically important, which is your number one job as the owner of the business is to bill and also to bring in new business. The time that you're supposed to be doing the most marketing is when you're the busiest, because you're filling that future pipeline. So that's really critically important, that you are constantly marketing and you're constantly bringing in business. And that's how you keep employees busy. So does that make sense to you all? Because really, if you can increase productivity, more billable people on your team means that you can move your projects faster, you can get money in faster, and you can handle more projects. What would you like to add to that, Ken?
No, it's so important to see that, there's obviously there's a lot of fear and concern about that, people hiring people, but sometimes people have to remember is that you can start off a little bit smaller and start with those. I always like that second point about doing the tasks that you're not good at or you don't want to do. Hiring that person, that junior person, to help with production, or the smaller, more menial tasks, administrative tasks, starting with those and then building into other ones. Obviously, they're not going to make you as much money, I think, initially, but it also frees you up so that you can do some of those things that are important, like getting more business and being more billable. But, it is a great little entry. That's not necessarily what Gail and I teach our clients. We always teach a little bit different philosophy of who you should hire, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But I think it's just really great that people are being honest about that they're fearful of that and about the number of hours of work, because you got to get your lives back. You can burn out real fast.
Yeah. And if you're doing consistently over 50 hours a week, you are heading for burnout for sure. So this is so interesting, and why you might resist hiring. And it's so typical for so many firms. I'll take the first three.
Yeah.
We have hiring objections, but the reality is if we can hire, we are going to have a better life. And you might think, I don't have enough space for a team. Maybe you're working from home, or my office is too small, and I don't know how to hire. So those are all temporary objections, and those can be resolved. And so in some cases, you can even, if you don't have space for a team, you can outsource. And that is a great option today. As some of you are already doing outsourcing, you don't have to have an office. You can certainly work as a remote team. And our company has been remote for 17 years. So we know all about working in that environment. And people are very productive when they're not necessarily in an office space.
Yep, for sure. Being worried about they can't keep paying my team. Like the fact that Gail's mentioned is so true, is that, listen, if you have that billable person out there and that you're bringing in that person at a lower rate than you're actually billing out, you're going to be gaining more revenue, more income to allow you to continue to do that. And it frees you up to be able to get more work. So it's kind of like, you have to be able to get out there and get more work, but you can't do that unless you have people there in order to be able to do the tasks that are important for the project to be done efficiently and fast. And this is where the control. Now, I say this with transparency. I've worked with design firm owners and architectural firm owners for 20 plus years, as Gail has. And there's a lot of people that think they can do it better and faster themselves. And there's probably no doubt. However, who you hire will dictate these last two parts. It's like if you can find someone that has the skill sets to be able to do the work effectively, efficiently, and maybe as fast or close to, it allows you to be, once again, focused on those other things. And you don't necessarily need to have so much time to be able to train them. Yes, everybody has to bring people on and train them the way you do things for your firm, maybe how you process some things and some of the flow of your projects. But overall, someone that understands the design process and be able to how the flow of a project goes, the aesthetic, what have you, you don't necessarily need to train them if you hire the right person, which we'll get into hiring the right person. But those two things go hand in hand. You have to give up a little control to be able to grow your business, and you'll be able to find the right level of candidate so you don't have to spend so much time constantly training them. Right?
Absolutely. So the more senior the person, the more likely that person will hit the ground running and produce revenue for your company very, very quickly. So if you want to grow, this is how you do it, is by building a team. So I'm just curious, how many of you have one of those hiring objections? And if so, what is that? Just drop that in the webinar
chat. Please. That's a big one. All right. While they're doing that, I want to get some information on this, talk about this next one. You want to start off, Gail? When's the right time to hire?
Right. Well, I think this is one. There are several different clues that it's time for you to hire. And one of those is having enough pipeline to carry your business for 3 to 6 months. And if you are, and I would bet money on this one, that if one person is doing cash flow projections on this call, I would be surprised. So if you are, please let me know, because I would love to know that. But if you have enough pipeline to carry your business, you will be totally fine if you can carry 3 to 6 months. You have enough projects for 3 to 6 months. So Katie's saying we had that pipeline fear before we hired, but we were so busy that we took the leap. Oh, yay, Katie. I love to see that. We do cash flow projections every month. Excellent. You get a gold star for today. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So again, revenue minimum is $250,000 per hire. So if you have hit $250,000 in your business, between that $250,000 to $500,000 mark, you're going to be probably needing to hire, or at least start with some outsourcing. And outsourcing is a good option until you're ready to hire a full-time person.
We'll go away.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to share this because this is something we have what we call a VIP experience, where we go into an in-depth understanding of your business and help you with strategy and plans to grow your business and scale it very quickly. But this is just my recommendation. Only start 2 projects per 2-week time period per project lead. So if you are getting to the point where you have so many leads coming in that literally your whole team is busy and they're starting a new project, or they have 2 projects within a 2-week period, do not start any more projects with them. Take a waiting list at the very least, and just let people that you know when you will be ready to take on more work. And then I think it's really also important for you to understand that you need to know what kind of business you want. And this is, I don't know how to describe this really super well, but a lifestyle business to me is something that serves your needs. And so that means if you're going to have this business, what kind of income do you need to have? What is it you want to have as far as your day-to-day business life? Do you want to work 40 hours a week? Do you want to work less than 40 hours a week? Are you willing to work more than 40 hours a week? All of these things are part of you just deciding what kind of business you want to have. As you scale up and you grow your business, and if you're hitting that $500,000, $1.5 million, $2.5 million, $5 million, that is where you are definitely needing to have the right people on your team. And also, if you want to sell your business down the road, you need to have a team. It cannot be based on just you, or you do not have a saleable business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important. And by the way, Gail, I know that Gail's been doing these VIP experiences and they're incredible. And there's a lot of information you'll get out of these. So they're really great. But I can tell you my perspective of the type of business that a lot of our clients want to be is really important to know. We have to understand, if you want to scale your company, which most people want to continue to grow and make more money, right? That's most people for sure. So as you continue to scale, but then they think of that exit plan. And you have to think about your exit plan the moment you start your business. If you don't think about that exit plan, whether it's 5 years or 50 years, it doesn't matter. You have to think about that. What is that going to look like? Some people want to give it to their children. Some people want to give it to their employees or sell it to their employees, or you want to sell it to an outside firm. You have to think about that stuff. It's really important. So if I can get this thing up, there we go. All right. Now let's get into talking about some talent. We get this, people come to us all the time, like, I just can't find the right talent. That's why you're all here. So let's talk about, how do you spot top talent? So what is, first of all, I want to talk about what an A player is, right? When someone talks about an A player, Gail mentioned someone that hits the ground running. So someone that obviously has been experienced enough to be able to do that job effectively, but it's also that someone actually that fits within the culture of your organization, right? Whether you're one person or 80 people, it doesn't matter. Every company has a culture, right? And whatever you kind of created. And so the A player is someone that it can effectively help you take on those projects and effectively that responsibility, but then also that fits within to your company culture. And like it says there, it's like when you understand what your ideal client is, you have to really look at what your ideal employee is, or the A to A player is. And I think it's really important to kind of take the time to think about that before you actually move forward. I'd love to see in the chat, has anyone ever wrote down like their core values or have really described their company culture before? I'd love to understand. If you can put that in the chat, it'd be really interesting to see. So anything you want to add on that, Gail?
Oh, I can't agree more. We talk about that in VIP. We do, we put people through the values exercise and the culture exercise so that you have something that you hire to and fire to. It's really important. So it looks like a lot of people they have values and culture written out, which is great. So that's a great starting point, is to have that well thought through and that you're sharing that with the new hires that you're bringing on.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to share this next one, and just because I would throw this at you, Ken, but this is one that I just believe in so much. And it's called, I don't know if you've heard the word or a phrase, reticular activation. If you're driving down the street and you've got a white car and all of you see are white cars that are just like yours, that is reticular activation. That's what I think a job description is like. So if you have a well-written job description, and you know what that right person is for your team, and you've written this out, you're more likely to find that person. And I'll share a really great story with you about this. I was thinking about a future hire for our business, and this is about 5 years ago now. And I happened to get a job description from one of my clients, and she sent it to me, and it was for her significant other. And I looked at that resume and I just put it away for a while. And then one day I started thinking about a position I wanted to fill in the company. And somewhere in the back of my memory bank, I remembered that I had received this resume from her. And I reached out to her the next morning. I said, hey, do you think that your significant other would be interested in talking to me about a job? And she said, I'll ask him and we'll see. And sure enough, he has now been working for us for 5 years. And so that is a perfect example of you finally put that list together of those things that you're looking for, and you see it, or you get reminded of someone that actually sent you a great resume. So just be open to that. And I will tell you that every time I'm looking for a new hire, that plays into who I end up hiring.
Yeah. And I can't stress more when Gail mentioned a well-written job description, we'll talk a little bit more, but a job description, people like to cookie cutter this, and you're not cookie cuttering your employee, right? You don't want the exact person every time. You want there's different attributes that each person brings to you. And so that part of this process is really critical in order to take the time to find the right person. If you spend the time, by the way, kudos to everyone that said yes about defining their company culture and core values. I think that's amazing. A lot of people don't do that. So give yourself a pat on the back. But what happens is a lot of people just kind of rush into things. But if you take the time to understand what that A player looks like, what your company is, what's going to really make sense, then you really put that down into pen and paper and really take the time to really analyze what that looks like. And then as you advertise that, as Gail says, you will attract those types of people typically. But it really don't rush that part, is what I'm saying, is just don't rush that part. But characteristics, big one. All right.
Go for it.
So the hungry, humble, and smart aspect of it. So when I think of someone that's hungry, that's someone that's really eager and excited and wants to learn, passionate about what you do, passionate about design, really excited about just being a sponge, no matter what level, right? The humble aspect of it is that, listen, I say this all the time, this is an ego-driven industry, and that's okay. Everyone's really proud of the work they do, and they really are excited about that. But having someone that's really humble, to be able to take criticism, that it's someone that actually can be proud of what they do, but at the same time, keeping that humble mindset is really powerful within an organization. And then I can't stress anymore is they have to be really smart. And what is smart? Smart doesn't necessarily mean that they can, recite, poetry or Latin or what have you. It's really understanding the right questions to ask. It's someone that really is a great listener and is taking that information and really deciphering what's really important to be done at that time. Smart doesn't necessarily have to be that, they have the math skills, what have you. That is part of that, but you want someone that's really smart. Well-educated is very important. Someone that's gone to a great design school, someone that's got the education to back up what they do is super important.
I want to add in something here because I have had conversations with some of my larger clients, and what they have run into in some instances is that people can't spell, their grammar is not that great, and their accuracy is not that great. So they can't trust them to do the proposals and necessarily do the communication skills that are necessary at a high level, especially with luxury clients. So be sure that when you are doing testing, that you are testing for skills such as that, the ability to be accurate, the ability to have great communication skills, both written and verbal. Those are critically important. So if you don't have those skills, or if you require those skills, be sure that you are eliminating people that don't fit that. You may love that person and you may think they are the greatest thing, but if they cannot do those things well, can they represent your company well? And will they cost you money if they make mistakes? So skills are incredibly important here.
I want to jump on that. You made a great point, is that everyone thinks that, with ChatGPT, everyone can write a well-written email or letter. And if you really want to test someone effectively, is have them do something in your office where they are writing an email to a client about a problem, right? Something went wrong. How are they going to fix it? What are they going to do to solve it? And don't allow them to use ChatGPT to see where their core basis is. Listen, I've been doing this a long time. I take advantage of ChatGPT all the time. I think it's great. It's an incredible tool. It's really great for strategizing. It is another mindset, to digital mindset to help. But there's things that you want them to be able to have those soft skills as well. How do they deal with confrontation within a project? If they're on a site, dealing with the vendors, dealing with the contractors, all those things are really important. And how they handle that is really important. So I think that Gail's point about understanding on how they can communicate is super, super important. But you have to remove some of those tools, even though they will probably use those tools on a daily basis. I think removing some of those to see how they work on a baseline, I think is really important. So, Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that's really interesting, and this has come up several times, is that when you have young hires, if they're fairly young out of college, they may or may not be that great on the verbal skills, and they might be better with texting and emails. But
Mhm.
here's the thing, there are times when things go wrong on a project, and you need to pick up the phone and call. And if that person, that hire, their first tendency is to send a text or an email, then that is not the answer that you need to hear. So be sure and ask about that. How would you handle a situation like this? Would you email? Would you text? Would you call? What would be your first idea about how you're going to solve that problem and handle that with the client? And when you're dealing with very wealthy people, sometimes you'll find out that if they're in their 50s and 60s, you're probably going to need to pick up that phone and call. So that is something that you want to check on. And the other thing is definitely always have a skill test on how well they design, and make sure that you give them a test that allows you to see how well they space plan, how well they draw a detail, and how they pull a palette together and present that. And if you can see them actually presenting to you a project that they've put together in your office, that would be a really great test. So the people that do this are going to have the very best talent join their team if they put them through these tests right up front.
It's so important. A design charrette is super important. Be mindful of people's time as you do the interview process, but putting them through the design charrette, taking a room or two and putting it together, how they put together the drawings, how they use AutoCAD, whatever tools that you use to ensure that they can use them effectively is super important. People are always worried about like how much time it's going to take. It shouldn't take them too much time, but you do need to give them some, adequate time to take care of it. Most likely this person has a job, so they can't necessarily just take off a day to be able to do it during work hours because they are working, but be mindful of that. But it is incredible part of the process. And even though it may take more time, which is the slow to hire mentality and fast to fire, but the slow mentality to go through the process, it is usually effective. So I highly recommend that. So talking about values, we talked about core values, right? We just mentioned that before. And if someone, there's a lot of great things. Speaking of ChatGPT, I took this question. I said, here's my company's core values. Give me 5 to 10 questions on each value that I can use in an interview scenario for potential candidates that I want to hire. And it gave me the most amazing and interesting questions to ask, right? So, we have a number of really wonderful core values. And we also want to make sure that people we're in pretty much of a sales mentality world. We live in a recruiting world. So one of the questions was, tell me about how you made money in high school. When you were in high school, how did you get money to spend for candy, comic books, whatever you did, new video games? What did you do to get some money? And it was amazing to see people's answers. Some people said, well, I had an allowance. Okay, well, that's not someone that's really gone out there. Other people were like, listen, I had a paper route, or I had a part-time job. Or there's one girl really impressed me. She said she used to go find furniture on the side of the road, and she would take it back to her garage and refurnish it, paint it, and then sell it at a secondhand market. And I was like, wow. She was like, talk about someone that was excited and eager about design, and it was amazing. So there's a really great way to kind of give me those questions asked. So I recommend to understand if they align with your values is super critical. Yeah.
And the culture piece too, and the culture is really is a little bit less tangible than values in a way, but it's how people feel when they are in your space, and the culture that you build within your company is so critically important. And I tell people all the time, your first client is actually your employee. So they are the representatives of your company. So your culture is something that they exude. And if you don't have a healthy culture, then you're not going to have happy clients. So I will tell you that you've got to have a great culture in order for your clients to be happy in the end.
Yeah, for sure. So important. So continue to spot talent is that we utilize the resources, right? You got to be flexible on where you find these people. We tell people all the time, like, listen, your vendor reps they know everything. They're like they're the gossip gurus of every company out there. They know what's happening. They hear all this stuff. They will be a wealth of knowledge to hey, I found out that, so-and-so is unhappy at their job. They're looking for a new job, or they're moving to closer to where you are and they want to eliminate a commute, or they want to go remote, whatever that may be. But your vendor reps are critical. So I'd highly recommend to tap into there. And then you could hire a recruiter. But if you guys have never worked with a recruiter before, so a recruiter for the industry is someone that will go out and they're full service. They typically will take everything, all the information about your company and the job, and they go source the very best talent for you. So it just saves you time. There's a fee aspect to that, but they're typically rewarded a fee when they actually have success. And there's some other recruiters. We're one of a few out there. But a recruiter can do a lot for you, but there is a fee aspect of it, and then you have to weigh the time and cost to that. But they usually have access to talent that is gainfully employed that you don't have access to, because these are people that typically are not applying to the job. So these are people they're connecting to based on what the position is and the skill sets that's needed.
Mm-hmm. A lot of our clients have used Ken and his team over the years, and it is a huge time saver. It is so much time and effort to go through all the different resumes, all the interview process, and just to get it down to a couple of good opportunities to hire is great. And it saves you the time and hopefully prevents a lot of mistakes in hiring. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of value in hiring a recruiter. And then I think the other part is getting referrals from colleagues in the industry. And if you tend to think that your competitors or other people, designers in the marketplace are competitors, I would encourage you to think of them as colleagues and start really talking about some of the things that you're having challenges with, and your colleagues can be your best friends out there. So some of those people may have somebody on their team. Maybe they don't have a full position for someone, or they're going through a little bit of a lull, but they need to find some work for one of their employees. There are so many ways that you can get additional help from your colleagues in the industry. So really look at making friends in this industry.
Yeah. There was a question on there about how can you recommend where to find some good recruiters? So I would say there's probably a handful of recruiters that are specific to the industry. You can see them on a lot of the big job boards, whether it's NEWH or ASID, they may have posted there. You can utilize ASID or IDA as a resource. They can direct you for sure. Listen, a lot of people have found us through ChatGPT. They use ChatGPT and said, listen, give me the best recruiters for the industry. And that's right now the number one resource. And we can't put anything into ChatGPT. It just takes based on so much information out there. But there's lots of ways you can do it. But I would utilize really just ask colleagues too. When you ask referrals, if they've used a recruiter, who did they use, right? Listen, I think we're really successful, but there are other great recruiters out there as well. And there are some HR or outsourcing that companies will use that can do some small recruiting within their services as well to support some smaller roles in addition to. So, yeah. All right. How to prepare to hire. We got about 15 minutes. So we talked about a defined culture, right, Gail? So that's super important. You got to know who you are. You got to know exactly what your company is all about and understand that. Job description, anything you want to add to the job description?
Well, I think it needs to be a little bit, I think it needs to include your culture. I have seen that recently in some of the job descriptions that have been posted from some of our clients. And that's when you find your best people, because you want to make sure that there is a cultural alignment before you even hire. So I think that's really important to have a well-written job description. And I'm sure you would probably say that you need to have a revenue or a range of pay that you're putting on that resume or on that job description as well. So people know what the range is that they're going to get paid.
Yeah, a lot of states now require that on the job postings. What's the pay range? So you do have to have that. And advertise everything you offer. Whatever, maybe you don't have full benefits, but you know what? You're willing to pay for someone's their NCIDQ, or maybe you're willing to pay for continuing education, or maybe you're willing to pay because you go to market every year and you take them on a trip. Advertise all the little things, which to some people could be a really big thing. So continue to do that. Define interview questions. Now, I'll just say this really nicely. Most people hire the people they like, right? And so you have to try to remove yourself from how you connect with somebody, even though it's very important. I'm not discounting that. But go into an interview with 10 to 20 questions at a minimum that we talked about your values, your core values, talking about the skill sets. I'm a big fan of behavioral interviewing, which is basically situational. So you'd basically have a question that would say, listen, all right, you're about to do an install and, several pieces of furniture are damaged. What do you do? How would you handle that situation? Let them talk it through it. You'll learn two things. One, they've encountered that situation and this is how they've done it. It may not have been exactly the way you would have handled it, but they've been through it or they've not. And if they've not been in that situation, and that's really important, then maybe this is not the ideal person for this particular position. But going in with a set of questions takes away the conversation where sometimes it gets very personal, like, oh my goodness, so you went to school there. Oh, I know so-and-so. And then they saw somebody else. And next thing you know, you start talking about their kids and stuff like that. That's important, but you got to be careful about that as well, too. Onboarding.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I know this is a big one for you when you talk to people is if you don't have a defined onboarding process, you should probably have some thought that you put into it before you hire somebody, and make sure that you have a training schedule of times in your schedule that are blocked to train. Because what you don't want to have happen is to bring somebody on board and you have no process for bringing them into your company and your processes and learning your style and the way you operate. If you don't have that figured out ahead of time, you are making a big mistake because that person will feel lost. And some people will just throw people right into projects, and that is not the right way to bring people into your company. So I remember one of my clients, and they're a very big firm now. When they originally started with people, they didn't even have a plan. They didn't have a computer for them. They didn't have cards for them. They didn't have their desk set up. And needless to say, we fixed that problem, but you have to have that. And then you also have to have a process to check in with people throughout that period of time, at least a 90-day review, if not more frequent. And then have regular conversations to ensure that that person is right for your team and that it's going well with their interaction and collaboration with other members on the team.
Absolutely. And I'll just say, like, when you think of a training schedule, don't think it has to be some huge elaborate book of schedule. It can be a simple one-sheeter. It is such a powerful thing. Even if you're just one person and this is your first employee, having a one piece of paper that says, okay, from 9 to 10, we're going to discuss about this project. From 10 to 10:30 is this. Lunch is in there. And having some just written it out, it is very powerful that they saw that you were well thought their day. And really that schedule should last for the first week, but it's not every moment of every day, but really well thought out really makes a major impact. And to the Gail's mentioned about, they won't feel lost. They have something to focus on. And it's good for you because there's times that you can't necessarily be with them, but you can put them on some learning responsibilities that they can focus on during the day. So, all right, the next one is going to be going the wrong way. Hiring mistakes. Ooh, okay. There's a lot of them. So notice how we keep going right back to culture. It's probably the number one reason why people tell me people don't work out. Yes, they can use skill set as they couldn't do the job or a certain aspect of the job, but typically it's attitude, culture. They just rubbed everybody the wrong way. Really big problem. And then a set hiring process, right? Slow to hire means that you should have at least three interactions with that potential candidate for the hiring process. And the hiring process really starts when you start advertising the position, right? Putting out a well-described job description. And then what's that process look of how you take those applicants in, maybe how you communicate with them, and then what happens during that interview process. how many times you're meeting with them, what do they have homework they have to do? Do they have to come with particular questions? Do they do a design charrette? All those things are super important. But if you don't have that, it can be a sinking ship pretty quick. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned earlier, you don't want to just hire people you like. I think that's a tendency a lot of people have when they first hire. You've really got to hire for the skills, the values, the culture. But the skills you absolutely must test. You cannot just assume that somebody shows you a beautiful portfolio that they know what they're doing, because that doesn't mean that they didn't spend a month working on a project just to make it look good for their portfolio. You want to test it right in your own studio.
Yeah.
And you mentioned also, I think the hiring process, you need to have 2 to 3 vetting interviews. And if you have a team, involve your team.
Yeah.
Take that person to lunch, have other people on your team take that person to lunch and see how they interact and if they fit the personalities of the team members. So I think it's really important to have that kind of a process as well.
Right. And for the people that are working 70 hours a week, this is really common. You're desperate just to hire a warm body. You're like, I don't care. I just need someone to be able to do this. Take the time. Trust me. You will spend more time making a bad hire than slowing up the process to go through a correct process of hiring and interviewing this candidate. Take the time up front. It will save you so much time, effort, headaches, frustration, sleep, so many things. So take the time, please. And then we mentioned a skills test, right? So Gail mentioned about whether it's a writing, whether it's some type of communication test. Talked about actually doing a design charrette. All super important. All goes together so seamlessly. But if you don't do them, it can really blow up in your face pretty big. So
here's a great question. Any recommendations on how to avoid training fatigue with your current team when you've had some unfortunate turnover? Well, let's talk about the real core root cause of why you've had unfortunate turnover. Sometimes it's not the culture fit. Sometimes it's not a skills fit. But that means that there's something in your hiring process that needs to be fixed. So it's a process issue, and you need to really look at and determine what is the root cause of why you're having turnover in the first place. So that's the first thing that you need to spend some time thinking about, and ask your team, how do you think we went wrong in this particular scenario? And then if you're still having turnover, then you still haven't solved the root cause of the problem. So that's really critically important. And then the training fatigue shouldn't be an issue if you are hiring in such a way that you're not constantly having to refill that pipeline with a new person. So that to me is what you need to fix first.
that's a great point, Gail. Really great. So delegation. So that's the whole idea, right? So that there are some comments about like they just want to do it themselves and they feel they can do it better. In order to make this an effective hire, you have to be able to delegate effectively, right? So making sure you're giving that new employee the time to shadow on a project during that onboarding process. Don't just throw them in, even if they're a senior person, right? Especially on the junior person, but even a senior person, you think, well, they've been doing this 5-7 years. They know what's going on. No, they need to have an introduction to how you do things, to how your team works, what's the flow of a project, and really take that time to ensure that they feel comfortable. Allow them to ask questions. You can ask them questions. Really important, but you've got to make sure that they're part of that shadowing right away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then delegating the outcome, not the task, right? So you want to really making sure that they know that they should get the project to X point. That is the point. That's the outcome. Really not telling them, okay, now you have to go into AutoCAD and this is what I want you to do. This is how we save things here, whatever that may look like. Really understanding what the outcome is, because then you can really gauge of whether or not they do it in a timely manner. Right? Are they being effective and efficient with their time? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, sure. Delegate and don't abdicate, which means that just because you hand something off, make sure that that person understands what it is that they are supposed to be doing. What is that outcome you're wanting from them? When do you need to have it? What is the quality of the work? so that they understand that this is what is required to make this work out. And do not micromanage the people. Make sure that they know what done looks like. Make sure that that's well defined. And then the very most important thing that you can do is have a feedback loop. So when you're handing something off to people, this is where most people forget to do this. And that feedback loop means that you ask that person, okay, so I've assigned you this task. Feedback to me what your understanding is as far as the timeline, the outcome, the things that we're expecting on this particular task that you're doing. And that feedback loop will help you understand what you missed in telling them what to do. And I guarantee you, you have forgotten something that you would have wanted to tell them. And they'll go away and they will say, I understand, I got it. But don't assume that, because if you assume that, you're going to have a problem. So just make sure that you have that feedback loop and make sure that they understand what that job is that you've given them and what it's supposed to be.
Right. And I'm going to add to that feedback loop. That feedback loop, when you start that off early in their time with you, right? So they know that that's kind of how it's going to be. It also creates an opportunity for them to give you feedback in general, right? To be able to articulate how they're feeling about something. Maybe they have a concern about a particular project, concern about a process. Not sure if that's the most effective way. Maybe they come up with a better mousetrap and how to do something. It allows them to feel comfortable that you're giving feedback, they're getting feedback. They're hearing you, you're hearing them. It really creates an incredible environment and culture that's really important. That's a big reason why, people, they leave jobs, because they're either thrown in without any, safety net to a position. They're not getting feedback, and they just feel like lost. And that's a big reason why people leave jobs very early on, because they're just kind of left to kind of figure it out themselves. And that's just not effective. It's a waste of time for you and for them, of course, right? Yeah. So in conclusion, Gail.
There you go. So if you want to work less, make more money, and do less of the things you don't like, hiring is definitely a route that you should consider. And I know it's a little bit scary to do it, but I promise you, you will wonder why you waited so long once you hire somebody. And I'll let you take the last two.
Yeah, I mean, listen, mentoring and building a company is so much fun. You gotta, you may not realize that there were some people that made some comments about, they don't want to manage people, but don't think of it as managing per se. I think of it as mentoring, right? Most people in their lives have had a mentor at some point. It could have been a family member, it could have been a teacher, but a mentor is someone that guides you, that gives you feedbacks, gives you encouragement, helps to correct you, get you back on path. So think of it that way. And then ultimately building your organization to, whether it's just making it more efficient and more effective, maybe you make a couple more bucks, that's great, but you just want a better oiled machine. Maybe you don't want to work on weekends. You want to spend time with your kids. You want to spend time with your significant other. These things will help by building a better organization, right? And then listen, you're going to make more money. You should make 2 to 3 times more that you're paying your billable team members, right? You should be making more of that. And if you don't have people on your team, then you can't do that. But so make sure that you are paying yourself well. And this was something we do a survey every year with Pro Collective. And it was amazing on how little money some owners were paying themselves. I was shocked. And then when you tie that along with what the revenue is, I was really surprised. And so you should absolutely be paying yourself more, but at the same time, making sure as you build that team and have those employees, it allows you to bring more income in, allows you to take on more projects, and a continuous cycle. But at the same time, make sure you're paying yourself first, right? Yeah, what do you want to add to that?
I think you said it well. So I know we're at the end of our time, so we just want to put some information up. And I know Helene has a couple of closing comments.
And maybe any Q&A, or I don't know if there's any Q&A that we need to do.
Yeah, we definitely still have time for a bit of Q&A. I know some people might be jumping off if they have somewhere they need to go, but we don't have a time frame unless you guys do. So as we do give a few people time if they wanted to throw something in there, I wanted to take a quick minute to thank you guys for joining us. And Gail and Kenneth, thank you for this powerful conversation. Personally, in my previous role, I did manage a team, and I feel like a lot of this would have been helpful then as well. So I'm going to actually launch one more poll for everybody. And this one is, if you're interested in learning more about Studio Designer or hearing and learning more about Gail, Kenneth, the Pearl Collective or Interior Talent, you can let us know in this poll as well. And that one is being launched right now. I hope. Mm-hmm.
While you're pulling that up, we put some information on this last page. So if you had any information that you wanted some information, Pro Collective's got a great budget calculator that's on there. We have some additional resources that you can use that are on our website, free to take them, please. We've taken just information as Pearl has, is over the time of you doing this long enough, you take the best, take the cream of the crop, and you be able to try to share that with people. And so please take advantage of that.
Yeah, and for some reason I'm having trouble launching this poll, so I'm not sure what is going on there.
Did anyone have any questions that they wanted to chime in the chat that we can answer while we're getting these last couple things taken care of? No questions too small or too big.
I think you guys have done a super great job answering all of their questions throughout. Oh, and I see what's going on. Hold on.
There's a question about hiring interns. I love the idea of hiring interns, but I'll just say this, and then Gail, you give your 2 cents. Hiring an intern, you still need to do a lot of the same things. But here's the thing is, don't hire an intern if you think they're just going to be cheap labor. An intern is an opportunity for you to give back what you're doing so someone can learn about how the design industry is. It allows them to be exposed to what you're doing, but they're not cheap labor. So please don't do that. I hear it all the time about, oh, I hired an intern, then they're going to be doing all this stuff. Now, yes, an intern will do some of those tasks that are not that exciting, for sure, but it's not cheap labor. It's designed to really kind of help guide and mentor them, because it's our obligation to the industry, right, to give back and to make sure that the next generation is going to be bigger and better than we were. So,
can I give you my thoughts on this? And I might be a little bit on the opposite side.
Yeah.
I would make sure that you don't start with hiring interns, because interns are very expensive to train, and it takes a ton of your time as the owner to train that person to do that job. It took 2 to 3 years for me with one hire that I had. Well, really, for any of the interns I had, it took 2 to 3 years to get them to the point where they're producing more than they're costing me in my time. So I like to go to the top and hire a senior first, because that person can produce income for your business quickly. As you grow your team and get to 8+ people, okay, fine, you can have an intern, but just know that they are going to take a lot of the time of your team and of yourself to train that person. So just make sure you've got the extra bandwidth to be able to do that. And don't think that it's cheaper. That is a false economy.
Yeah, it's so true. Good point, Gail. This is a really good point. What is the pay scale to hire a junior designer to intermediate, junior, or senior designers? That's a big one, because it's based on where you're located regionally. But I'll give you some numbers just nationally. You can't put this in necessarily big cities, but a junior designer ranges anywhere from probably $40,000 to $55,000, $60,000, depending on where you are. Then it can go from roughly $60,000 to maybe $80,000 for intermediate. And then a senior designer is usually typically $85,000 to could be $200,000, $250,000, depending on where they are. But I would say the mean is probably $85,000 to like $125,000 for a senior designer is typically what we see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Looks like we have answered all the questions, and
you guys just killed it with everything. That's why everything was in your slides. Everyone's super prepared now. So with that, I want to say a big thank you to you both for taking time out of your day to touch base with everybody here and explain, what it really takes to build a high-performing team in your design business, and how stepping into your role as a CEO can really unlock more profit, more time, and greater fulfillment for all these designers. And at Studio Designer, we're also here to support your business with tools that help you manage projects and finances and your daily operations. So we hope that today's session offered everybody clear and practical strategies to help you grow with intention. And thank you again for attending. We'll see you all at the next Work of Design Live webinar.
And I want to thank Studio Designer for hosting us. We always appreciate being on here, and you are the software that we recommend when we tell people what they need to be using to run their businesses.
I can't agree more. Thank you so much, Studio Designer. Thank you for everyone being here. Don't be afraid. It'll change your life for very positively. Take the leap if you're ready. If you need more resources, let us know. But we are so thankful that you'd spend this time with us. And thank you, Studio Designer. Thank you, Gail. Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.